Almost exactly 1 year ago, I opened an episode of this podcast by talking about a protest I attended at Grand Central Terminal to protest Israel's pending invasion of the Gaza Strip. I described how the force of the military and police state descended upon and arrested hundreds of peaceful protesters to restore order. I concluded with a plea to get out in the streets, hoping that public pressure on the U.S. government could bring about a change in policy. That did not happen. The UN Human Rights Office recently, and I quote here from the BBC, verified the details of 8,119 people killed in Gaza from November 2023 to April 2024. Its analysis found around 44% of verified victims were children and 26% women. The ages most represented among the dead were 5 to 9-year-olds. About 80% of victims were killed in residential buildings or similar housing, the agency added. The process of ethnic cleansing is nearing its final stage in northern Gaza, where an IDF brigadier general recently stated that, quote, there is no intention of allowing the residents of the northern Gaza Strip to return, end quote, falsely claiming that the area is now completely free of civilians. It appears that the IDF intends to exterminate the remaining population as they progress south, giving Israeli settlers carte blanche to recolonize the area within the next year or two. Donald Trump was reelected president last week Tuesday, winning the electoral votes of every single swing state and the majority of the national popular vote at time of recording. Key to his campaign were promises to conduct mass deportations, denaturalize American citizens, and end birthright citizenship. He also intends to pardon all of the January 6 rioters and quite possibly himself as well, thus dismantling the entire prosecutorial framework that liberals carefully constructed over the past 4 years. According to exit polls from NBC and CNN, 82% of white evangelical Christians voted for Trump in this election. This is up from 2020, which saw 76% of white evangelicals supporting him, and even 2016, where 80% supported him. Despite yet another cycle of talking heads hemming and hawing about what could have been done to peel their support away, white evangelicals voted reliably en bloc, as has been the case since the rise of the moral majority in the 1980s. Mainstream media commenters tend to treat evangelical Christianity as a novelty. They puzzle over why followers of a Messiah who advocated turning the other cheek when slapped in the face could back a guy who tried to impress Billy Bush by boasting of grabbing women by the pussy. They wonder why these Christians tend to count the most ardent Zionists among their ranks. They spin a story of naivete and distraction. You know the beats. Something, 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 self-interest, something, something, abortion, blah, blah, gender, race. All of this misses the point. The distilled fury and hate that animates white evangelical Christianity is its core feature. It's what drove colonization of the first English and Dutch colonies in the New World, what distributed African slaves throughout the continent, what pushed westward, subjugating and or annihilating the people who inhabited the land for millennia, what set up restrictive housing covenants and loan guidelines within major American cities, what intuitively coalesced behind Donald Trump mere months after he descended that stupid fucking golden escalator and talked about how Mexico wasn't sending their best. With limited exceptions on the margins, this kind of Christianity can't be debated theologically or appealed to materially. It can and will only grow like a cancerous tumor. It has no regard for the well-being of others. It cannot coexist with anyone else. It can only subjugate. The past week has been full of finger-pointing and recriminations about what went wrong and who fucked up. These discussions are unlikely to do much. The Democrats haven't shown an interest in learning from their mistakes, and they don't appear to be interested in starting now. So what I think is that you should focus instead on who's trustworthy. Anyone who expresses the slightest willingness to cede ground on fundamental questions of bodily autonomy has already lost. They will be run roughshod over by Trumpism until they outlast their usefulness as propaganda messengers, at which point they will be purged. Discard their opinions with extreme prejudice and instead connect with the people in your life you know will fight for you. That person you're thinking of right now. Reach out to them today. Do it. Today, I am afraid. I think a lot of other people are too. I think they cover that fear with snark or smugness or hasty rationalizations about how it can't really be that bad. A year ago, if you'd told me that Israel's response to the October 7 attacks would end with a complete ethnic cleansing of the Gaza Strip, I'd say you were going a bit far. Now it looks like a probable outcome. So too does a near complete rollback of basic civil rights and protections in the United States. The fear you feel is a testament to your humanity. Beneath that fear remains a well of courage, strength, and hope. You may not be able to access those parts of you right now, but in spite of everything, you will. And then we will fight. Let's start the show.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the worst of all possible worlds. We're still here, in spite of everything. I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
And I'm the worst of all possible Bryans.
We'd had on the calendar doing God's Not Dead 2 for this week. We put it in here before realizing that it was going to be after the election. And so we got back together right after the election, the day after, that Wednesday, and we're just like, what? So what? Do we want to try something else? Do we want to go for it? And pretty quickly, I think we all aligned that, yeah, no, doing this, talking about this piece of media is the sensible thing to do.
Yeah, the first time that I saw God's Not Dead 2 was with you, Josh.
Right.
It was election night 2016.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had gone to your house and we were
horrible
waiting
choice.
for the count to go through, and then it took much longer than
Right.
expected.
Unlike this
deep-
past Tuesday night,
Yeah.
where it was quite efficient, actually.
Deep into the night.
Yeah.
And so we were watching movies and whatever else to kind of distract ourselves. We watched the movie Tickled,
Oh,
which
yeah.
was and
sure.
remains a pretty fantastic documentary
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
a real sick son of a bitch. And then
yeah.
we decided, we watched God's Not Dead a little while back. Let's watch God's Not Dead 2, and felt like absolute shit afterwards. God's Not Dead 1 is just so blinkered and stupid.
Yes.
And
Right.
we're like, what?
It's
These people
hard to,
don't
like,
occupy
parse,
the world.
yeah.
But it's also like the original God's Not Dead. And, we already did an episode about this. If you want to go back and have a listen, we did it with Greg from Brigham Young Money.
I was out with COVID that week,
That's right.
but I will say that I had seen it before,
Yeah.
and it was very bad. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It's not even like a fun hate watch. It's
No.
just mostly very
It's really,
boring.
it drags. It's very, very long.
Yeah.
And God's Not Dead 2, we're like, okay, let's just see what Ray Wise is up to
Right.
in this thing. And
Yeah.
then we were like, oh, no, we are living in the world that they have constructed
Yep.
in this film.
I do remember that sense of like, A, being shell-shocked by the results, and then B, being like, there is so much of a parallel between the world that this film lives in
Yeah.
and the result that we got.
There's
And-
an urgency to the making of God's Not Dead 2. The fact that it's released in 2016, it's sort of a parallel to Hamilton, honestly. It's on the opposite side of that, where it's like it only could have been made in that moment of tension,
Right.
where they're like, either we're going to get another 4 to 8 years of the Obama order, or we could fight back. And it came out in April of 2016, so they were not probably wanting Trump to be their guy, right? They wanted
Right.
like a sensible Ted Cruz
Right.
situation, Jeb, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, they said they wanted that,
Right.
but what they've always wanted is Trump. And we'll talk about that more as we get into the meat and potatoes of this film. But AJ, you said you had only seen OG God's Not Dead
Yeah.
a long time ago. God's Not Dead 2, you watched.
Too God, too dead.
This was your first time watching God's Not Dead 2.
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was the first time and last, which is I'm very excited
You're not
to
gonna
announce
go
that
watch it
today.
again?
No, I think I'm good. I think I got it. I don't
Got
think
it.
it's a
Okay.
film that really
Pretty dense.
Yeah, it's
I don't know.
it's not a film that requires repeat viewings.
No.
I think the consolation I have is that whoever made this movie had never seen another movie before, which is wild because he had made another movie before this. But like it is so
What's that director's name
incomprehensible
again?
bad. Yeah, hold on. Let's pull this up,
Yeah,
shall
what's
we?
this?
Okay.
Harold Cronk,
Oh.
which is not a real name. It's
No.
the first draft name of Stranger Than Fiction protagonist Harold Crick, I would imagine.
The thing about Harold Cronk, he moved up the ladder. He used to just be a crewman, and he was just pulling levers, but he'd always pull the wrong
lever.
So they just had to get him away from the levers by any means possible.
Yeah, he would stand in the video village, watching the dailies and be like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's all coming together."
They tried to get him on craft services because he made these great spinach puffs.
That's funny. You're funny. God's Not Dead 1 was produced by a company called PureFlix.
Yep.
And we talked about
Yep.
them in more depth in our God's Not Dead episode.
They have their own channel now on Amazon. I learned.
Yes, and also
Yes,
in
their
PureFlix
own service.
In
Yeah.
that service, PureFlix Entertainment is now co-owned by Sony, and a company called Great American, which is a Christian media conglomerate.
Well, and as we saw here, this movie is distributed by Universal Pictures. That's
the DVD
the first
is.
thing you see.
Yeah. The film version of God's Not Dead 2, the theatrical cut, was self-distributed, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But God's Not Dead 1 was a surprise hit, follows a plucky young undergrad who challenges his atheist professor, who is memorably played by Kevin Sorbo, after he requires his entire class, his philosophy class, to sign a statement saying that God is dead. This film was released by a company called Freestyle Releasing, which mostly specializes, I know it's ridiculous.
Nothing could be further from freestyling than this fucking movie.
But nevertheless, it becomes a big hit. Grosses over $60 million in theaters against a $2 million
and that's
budget.
just theaters, right? Like, this is not a movie that's really even designed for the theatrical market.
No.
So it makes a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's almost one of those things that, particularly for these films, it's actually almost a boon to get a lot of critics hating on your
Like a
movie
Pat Boone, even.
Oh boy, because then you can be like, you can claim that you are being discriminated against, right? It's just like, it's because it's Christian entertainment that they don't like it.
Here's
our
silent majority that loves the film, and the critics all hate it. They did the same thing for Fireproof, and they were like, Fireproof, the number one independent film of 2000 and whatever.
Right. And so any and all things we say from here going forward are not going to convince you that there isn't some sort of plot against this movie. But you have to understand that this movie sucks.
Yeah,
it's a bad movie.
It's bad.
Yeah, it is. It is not just bad in a way that, like, oh, the story doesn't hit the things it wants to do, or like it isn't quite like achieving its ambitions. It's that it doesn't understand, like, on a basic level, what a film is,
or even a story for
or
that
what
matter.
a story is, or what a purpose of a camera is.
Right.
There are so many shots in this thing that are just out of focus in a way that is unforgivable.
Oh, it's unbelievable. But what's kind of interesting too is that actually I would argue that God's Not Dead 2 is a technically inferior film to the original God's Not Dead in terms of...
I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree. In cinematography, it's way better.
Okay.
Like,
okay.
if you
there's
really,
money
like,
in this one.
If you look at them side by side and you're watching them, like, this thing actually has like an even color grade.
Sometimes.
Like, there are a handful of good shots of like a bridge somewhere at the very beginning.
That I'm pretty sure is stock footage.
It is downtown Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yeah, I think that's stock footage.
No,
of downtown
I think
Little
they got
Rock,
a drone.
Arkansas. They got a drone. Okay.
Look, either way, what we need to do here real quick is find the bridge from God's Not Dead 1 to God's Not Dead 2.
Yeah. Right. And
Basically,
it's made of money.
That's right, because $60 million in domestic gross against a $2 million budget, that is a 30 times return on your investment. And it went on to gross another $32 million in home video sales.
Wow.
So it didn't take much to, get a sequel greenlit. And not only did they have the success of the first film, they also had a major presence on a little social network called Facebook, which was still a useful way to communicate with people in 2014.
Yeah, there was a really big post that had an AI-generated Kevin Sorbo. He was 102 years old. He had baked his own cake. He was also an African child, and he was also a shellfish.
Made of plastic soda bottles, beginning his baking journey.
Kevin Sodabo.
That's really a good point, AJ.
Kevin Sodabo bo 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 bo.
For just to note, by the way, the God's Not Dead Facebook page currently has 7.3 million likes.
Ooh.
But
God's really not dead.
But notably, most of its posts only have between like 50 to 150 reactions, which really gives you a sense of how
rough.
Is it still posting?
Yes.
The same page?
Multiple times a day.
Wow.
And it's mostly just like...
Is it promoting the newest one?
It's that, but it's also just like daily affirmations. It's like images being like, don't forget, God loves you, in that kind of bullshit.
Okay.
Right.
Here's how we get to God's Not Dead 2 then. This film is greenlit with a higher production budget of $5 million.
Whoa.
Which still makes it a small budget movie,
It's
obviously.
a tiny
but
movie.
That is 2.5 times the budget of the original. And the big coup here is the casting that they get.
Yeah.
The first big headliner that they get is Melissa Joan Hart of Clarissa Explains It All and Sabrina the Teenage Witch fame. She is hired to play the protagonist, and I found this clip here from CBN, Pat Robertson's Christian Broadcasting Network, where she explains why she took the role.
This was a calling for me to do this. I felt like this was a mission for me to go on and to, stand up for my beliefs and be a little bit louder about my faith.
Like her character, Grace, Melissa is a Christian.
I was raised a Catholic girl and married a Baptist, so I became a Presbyterian. But, all the while searching. And in the last few years, actually, I found a beautiful Bible study where I felt a lot of fellowship with the women and felt very loved and nurtured there. And it's really helped my walk.
So I just wanted to point out, Melissa Joan Hart mentions Catholicism,
Yes.
Baptists,
Yes.
and Reformed Christianity.
Well, she said Presbyterian.
That's a form of Reformed Christianity.
Oh, okay. But come on. It's Scottish.
She's all three of us at once.
Yeah.
I don't accept this. I don't accept this premise. You are stretching this. There are major theological differences between a Presbyterian and a Reformed.
Major Jehovah Hooey, MGH. Melissa Joan Hart. So,
you're C.S. Lewising Melissa Joan Hart?
It's harder now because there's three names.
She doesn't go by her initials.
Jehovah Hooey?
Oh, God. How many of these do you have?
A reach.
Don't worry about it.
That's a reach.
But here's the thing. This, to me, really brings a lot of Blue's Clues energy because it's Catholic plus Baptist equals Presbyterian in the way that salt plus pepper equals paprika. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. But also, it does match the logic of a lot of this film, which often presents arguments as 2 + 2 = purple. And it's like, see, we've proved purple.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, and
Jesus invented calendars.
and I mentioned, of course, the high-profile casting here. The other big piece of high-profile casting was getting Ray Wise, who you, of course, might know from Twin Peaks or from that episode of Star Trek where he treats Picard as a god. What else do we...
Or Tim and Eric's $1 billion movie where he runs the Shrim Healing Center.
Yeah. He does play the literal devil in a TV show called Reaper.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he's played the devil a couple of times.
He's very good at it.
That's exactly what he's doing here, right? He's not literally the devil, but he is playing a role here where he is an attorney.
He's an ACLU.
Who hates God.
Jew lawyer.
Pretty much.
I don't know if they never say he's Jewish. I'm going to say he's the same ethnicity as Ray Wise. He is Romanian. He is an evil Romanian ACLU lawyer.
Yes.
They founded Unitarianism.
Who, at different points, it's just like, I don't know if he's really aware of what's happening in the movie or what the movie is arguing.
Say.
It's really difficult to say because he is giving a very charming performance, except for like 3 lines where the director literally seems to have leaned on screen and be like, be the devil.
And it's worth noting as well that Ray Wise has now returned to the franchise.
Yeah, for the fifth movie.
God's Not Dead, In God We Trust, the 5th installation.
They've dropped the numbers. That's how high up we are now.
It's like The Land Before Time.
No, they kept the numbers. Land Before Time kept the fucking numbers.
Yeah. But yes, it was just released in September. So like he was in for 2. He went away for 3 and 4. Now he's fucking back, baby. But
they basically get one of these movies out like every 2 years ish.
Right.
But of course, the pandemic probably got in the way of things. So it was like 2014, 2016, 2018, 2021, and now 2024. They're taking 3 years now.
It will be very interesting to get into the ones that were shot during a more like a Trump administration, you know, once we get into God's Not Dead 3, just to see like what grievance they could have after winning everything they ever wanted.
Because the grievances pick up even more in the third one.
Because they just get pettier because they got the other ones, like the major ones, so they have to really double and drill down there.
And just to point up what the timing is of this movie, the film God's Not Dead 2 wraps in July 2015, and then it's released in April of 2016. To very similar critical reviews to the original. In fact, even a little worse.
Even the Christian reviewers are like, I don't know.
And that's what I thought was really interesting.
Wow.
I went on YouTube to look up, I don't know, like God's Not Dead Christian review. And, you know, there were a few absolute cranks who fucking loved it. But like your average, like really soy Marvel movie Christian YouTuber would just be like, this wasn't a very good movie.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't, because there's a lot of parts of it that are just an advertisement. And it's so funny to me, like, how many, like, you know, Republican, like, boomers that I know, personally, like, they hate commercials, right? You fast forward through them so you can get to the content.
Yeah.
And then the content is just a commercial for a book that you have to buy because it proves that Jesus was a PI, I guess.
and the actual
Magnum.
the grosses sort of reflected that. You know, again, this did recoup and then some. It grossed $20 million domestically, so got 4 times its budget back. But 4X is a much lower multiplier than 30X.
Yeah.
And then it was actually released to home video in July 2016 by Universal, as we had mentioned, grossing $8 million. The other noteworthy thing about that theatrical release, even though they made less, they probably got a bigger cut of the box office proceeds because they distributed it themselves this time around, which would then be their model going forward.
Yeah.
Right.
God's Not Dead is the best that a movie like this has ever done. God's Not Dead 2 was financially already on the downswing.
Yeah.
And although the franchise has been able to continue to recoup its investment because it has a built-in audience, these are not popular movies.
Yeah, no.
Which is also to say that evangelicals are not a majority of society, even though they call themselves that.
The silent one, in
Yes.
fact, and which
Like a
I'm-
fart.
like a true fart. But it's so baffling to me, like the silent majority. It's like this is my invisible friend.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like I don't think the friend is there.
You
that
can't
you
see
think
him.
is there.
You can't hear him. He's there,
sitting in
though.
a chair. I'm gonna yell at him about some stuff going on in politics, and then I'm gonna go on to make some actually pretty good movies. Juror number 2.
I disagree.
So
pretty good.
Lazy
after
director.
This movie, like I said, released in July 2016 to home video. 4 months later, Donald J. Trump defeats Hillary Clinton to be elected 45th president of the United States as Brian and I watch this movie in my apartment.
Yes.
just such a wild choice for that particular election.
It's
too.
not wild when you know who we are.
No, I know. I know.
It's like, yeah, we really weren't thinking about it. I think there was still in 2016, there was a little bit of disbelief. We were both kind of that last weekend beforehand, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we were still kind of holding out. Okay, well, maybe it won't be everything. And then it was everything.
It's everything.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. Like, you know, people have been asking me, like, how have you been reacting to this one? And it's just like, well, in 2016, my entire worldview was shattered completely.
Yeah.
And this time it wasn't so much. It reaffirmed some really bad shit.
Yeah,
but
you don't want to be proven right, but in a situation like this, but
yeah, but the thing was, I didn't also think that the election would go one way or the other. Like, I didn't think I was right. I wanted to, I had the feeling, but I didn't want it to be like, I'm no Nostradamus. I'm no Nate Silver getting it wrong all the time.
You were just unsure.
Yeah, I was just unsure. And so that it reaffirmed a lot of that stuff was really hard, but again, not as shattering. So in 2016, I was with you both where I was like, I was really thinking like Hillary's going to win, and then, you know, we'll go from there, because I was in my very comfortable sort of liberal bubble at that point. And then that was the night it burst entirely. But I'll always remember my buddy Sam, who was very good at like following county by county shit in the count or whatever. He just started pacing back and forth in the bar we were in. And I'm like, oh, we are fucked. Yeah. Like, we are absolutely fucked.
So before we jump into the actual recap of the movie, which we'll do momentarily, AJ, you wanted to regale us with a small amount of Cronkology, right?
Yes, some facts about Harold Cronk, in that I only really have the one fact, which is that he was a teacher. He was an art teacher for about 2 years.
He used to be roommates with Major Glory and Val Hallen. He was infrackable.
Oh, God.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Cronk.
Jesus Cronk. Oh, hi, Melissa Joan, hate you right now. So he was handpicked for this, I think, because he was a friend of a friend gig, and they threw him up, and he was just like, sure. And everybody really likes this guy. Like, he was voted like the best,
most likely to Cronk seed.
most long. 3 Cronks in a row. But he was voted like...
He's the prom Cronk, or the Cronk king?
He's the Cronk king.
Prom king.
Prom Cronk.
He's the Cronk. He's the crow. He's the crawdad.
Check this out. He's going to play as Promptco. That's nothing.
He's the best. He's
We're
the Cronkest.
this. I had the one, and now I'm double and triple dipping, and I can't do it.
You got those crocodile tears.
Oh, God damn it!
What do we need to know about Harold Cronk?
Well, all you need to know is that he was very popular. He was voted the best teacher in his school 2 years in a row, which means that he is, in fact, the second worst thing to ever come out of art school.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Well, let's talk then
He
about.
also went with his friend Kumar to White Castle.
Come on, dude.
That's not a Cronk joke. That's a Harold
That's
joke.
a Harold joke. Wow, are we UCB right
Yeah.
now? Because that was a pretty good Harold.
I tell you what, though, you don't want to
don't
hear
know
his
what that
angels
means.
singing. Once his
Oh.
angels start singing, it's over for you,
Yeah,
hoes.
Cronk the Herald Angels.
Kronk is born in Bethlehem.
God's not dead too.
Yeah. He's surely alive.
He's surely alive.
We tried to kill him in the first one,
And
but
we
lo
failed.
and behold,
Yeah.
he comes back in the sequel.
We killed Kevin Sorbo successfully in the first one,
sure
but
did.
God made it out okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did he get
Yeah.
Did he get Meet Joe Blacked at the beginning of that? Was he hit by a car and then hit a different car and then died? Is
No,
that
it's just
how
the
he died in the
one
first
car.
one?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't.
Just the one
okay.
car, and then Willie Robertson is like, "No, don't die. I gotta kiss you.
Right, and then
I gotta get you in the Duck Dynasty."
right, and then he gets like the buzzer beater conversion,
Yeah.
and he passes on.
Okay, so he's in heaven right now.
He's in heaven.
in heaven.
in
Kevin
the
Sorbo's in
universe.
heaven.
He's sitting down watching this trial and dozing off like the
It's
rest
me,
of us.
Kevin. So Harold Cronk's magnum opus,
That's his
God's
name.
Not Dead 2,
Yeah.
begins with these establishing shots of pure Americana.
Yeah.
Right? Where we're here in
Got a river and a bridge.
Pure Arkansas.
That's right. And the music is fucking abominable.
From the lips of those you saved,
Oh.
a redemption song will rise.
Yeah.
With the sound so full it cracks the sky. Whoa, we sing hallelujah. Whoa,
Waving through a window.
with the sound of the saints as we march on to Zion, singing hallelujah.
So,
Wait, Saints?
yeah, the Saints are marching. Or whatever.
Okay, in the Protestant tradition, we're all saints.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you
yeah.
for the clarification.
Establishing shots of a little league team praying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some firefighters raising an American flag.
Hell yeah, dude.
And then we also get some character introductions, some
Yeah.
character reintroductions. So Melissa Joan Hart getting breakfast ready for her decrepit fucking grandfather. We've got the return of Martin, Chinese Martin from
Chinese
the first
Martin.
film.
Yeah,
right.
We've got Pastor Dave,
Yep.
who is David A.R. White. He's sort of the pastor character who keeps it all together.
Jesus, man.
Jesus, man.
We meet his life partner, Pastor Jude.
That's right.
As well.
Yes. We meet liberal Amy, or re-meet her rather.
Yeah, the cancer lady.
She vlogged the New Left in the
Yeah.
first movie, but then got cancer, and so the Newsboys made her a Christian.
She
Michael
became
Tate
very
cured her.
good friends with Michael Tate.
And then finally, we get sort of as our last establishing shot, this brunette teenager who's like walking past an empty bedroom,
yeah,
like
she's
looking
not
in
from
on
the
it.
first movie.
No,
Hold
who is
on.
that?
No.
Who is that?
Wait, what happened to Josh Wheaton? I know he got canceled after all the stuff he did with those actresses.
Josh Wheaton, by the way, the protagonist of the first God's Not Dead, will not be showing up in this film,
No.
although
Yeah.
he does show up in 3.
What?
So something to look forward to.
So yeah, we
He got
see the
Firefly.
sign for Hadley University
Right.
as just like a little. That's a thing that existed in the first movie. Has
Right.
nothing to do with anything else. Go
Right.
fuck yourself.
Well, it's amazing too to watch this and be like, oh my God, there is a formula. They think that following this formula will make them a good movie, and it's just not, because what they're trying to do seems to be like a Love Actually.
Right.
Yes. They want to bring all these subplots, like have them all these disparate plots, like revolving around the theme, I guess, of prayer in schools, but really they just end up being entirely disparate subplots.
Yeah, it's actually a little bit more controlled. Like it's not 1,000 subplots all meeting up. Instead,
Right.
they're like, oh no, we're just going to keep developing these characters so that you'll see what they do in the next film.
Exactly. This
Right.
is establishing lore and canon that will carry through to the future films in
Yeah.
this increasingly serialized universe.
If you watch this movie by itself, it's just like, here's a Chinese guy for a few
It's so
scenes.
weird.
He's got some stuff going
Well,
on.
I had forgotten that he was in the first one.
How did
so-
you forget Martin?
Because I watched it 9 years
Good point.
ago. Like
because
I didn't
Martin
watch it for
also
the
had
podcast.
like nothing to do with anything
No, that's
in the
true.
first
He
movie.
was just the guy who Josh talked to be like, hey, Martin, you should love Jesus. And Martin was like, okay.
And Martin's just like, I'm so Chinese, I've never heard of him
It's
before.
so weird,
How
but-
does
Right.
one become this?
How indeed.
And he just gets the Eugene Meltzner conversion
Yes,
arc.
he does. Yes, he does. And we'll talk a bit more
Yeah.
about Martin's arc in a bit. But for now, let's talk about our primary protagonist here, a teenager known as Brooke. This right here, what we're about to play, is the first lines of the film. You have no context other than what you're about to hear.
Brooke, we're all upset, but we need to move on.
Honey, you're a junior now. It's your make or break year, so there's no room for self-pity.
Can you give Marlene and I a ride to school today?
I'm sorry, honey. I don't have time. I have an 8:30 with Mark Shelley at White and Wolf.
What? Richard, you didn't say anything. How did you get the meeting?
Well, it's just a meeting, so don't get too excited. But
Just a meeting, AJ. Don't get
it
too
could
excited.
be-
I know.
So excited.
Who's going to the meeting with you?
Hey, I got the meeting.
I know. I just think maybe you should.
So then
Oh, it's still going.
we follow Brooke as she walks out the door.
Yeah.
As the parents continue to improvise lines of, I know about the meeting. I have a
I
meeting.
don't know about that. I'd say they're pretty over it. As long as
Yeah.
they can talk us tonight. I'll let her
Okay,
know you're coming.
cool.
It's not like they'll miss me.
Mom rolls
And
up.
her mom drives up.
I'm
Yeah.
serious, honey. You need to get focused. Or you could say goodbye, Stanford. Hello, Somewhere State.
Got it.
And then she drives away. Like that's just the whole conversation with her mom is her mom pulling the car up and being like, go to Stanford and driving off.
Okay, so here's the thing about
Yes.
the parents in this movie.
Yes.
They're Roald Dahl parents.
Yes.
They're just like
oh yeah.
diabolically evil to the point of just unbelievability. And for a thing that really wants you to pay attention to the real world facts of all these court cases.
Right.
He's
that
doing
are
finger
being-
quotes, folks.
Yeah, that are being, shoved in the faces of good evangelical Christians everywhere that are apparently accurate. To have parents this cartoonish
Yeah.
actually doesn't help even their propaganda.
Well, it
No.
doesn't ground the character of Brooke. You have no frame of reference for what her world looks like. It's just that her parents are the worst fucking people in the world.
Yeah, she had a brother die, but they want that to be a surprise.
Yeah,
kind
which is
of.
really weird, but because then it's supposed to be like, wait, we need to get over it. Get over what? I completely missed this dialogue the first time I was
Yeah,
watching
at
it. 'cause
first I thought it was just, oh, her parents are gonna get divorced
Or
Like
something.
they're bickering and
Right,
they're not
right,
really.
right.
Yeah.
yeah, and you know what? Sometimes meetings just happen.
The worst thing is that meeting with the guy. Why it's so specific is because that's a character in the first movie.
Oh, is that the Dean Cain character?
They're throwing a
shit,
bone.
okay.
They're throwing a bone to the
Unbelievable.
audience, being
The
like,
loreheads.
"Oh yes, that's off-screen
that's
Dean Cain."
fantastic.
Hey there, you are listening to a preview of a premium episode of The Worst of All Possible Worlds. If you'd like to listen to the rest of this, head on over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/worstofall. And you can listen to not only the rest of this episode, but our entire backlog of premium episodes, bonus episodes, and if you subscribe at the $10 tier, you will get an extra episode of the podcast every single month. Again, that is patreon.com/worstofall. Hope to see you there.